What if I told you death metal's raw, ferocious roots weren't a thing of the past? While bands like Death and Obituary have paved the way, a new wave of bands is keeping that old school spirit alive, and doing it with their own twist.
Okay, now you have my attention.
In this video, we're diving into the old school origins of death metal, and the bands that defined it. And I'll also introduce you to 3 new, incredible bands that are carrying the torch. Their riffs hit just as hard, their tone is just as heavy, and their vision is just as uncompromising. We'll explore how these modern bands channel the chaos of their predecessors, while injecting fresh ideas into the genre. Stick around, because by the end, you'll not only revisit the classics, but also discover some killer new music to add to your playlist. Death metal's roots can be traced back to a lot of places, but a lot of people agree that it began with Possessed's 7 Churches in 1985. It was a groundbreaking release made by teenagers during the thrash era. Released alongside creators Pleasure to Kill and Slayer's Reign in Blood, Possessed helped define the genre's raw aggression. Around the same time, Death, originally known as Mantis, released Scream Bloody Gore in 1987, cementing Florida as a hub for death metal. This sparked a new wave of influential releases, including Obituary's Slowly Rewrought and Morbid Angel's Altars of Madness, both in 1989. Meanwhile, bands like Autopsy with Severed Survival and Pestilence with Consuming Impulse pushed the sound into darker and more brutal territory. Much of the early scene was shaped by producer Scott Burns, whose work became synonymous with the genre in the 90s. The genre's pioneers paved the way for the heavyweights, bands like Cannibal Corpse, Entombed, and Deicide. Cannibal Corpse, my favorite band, paved the way with their signature intensity. They were able to achieve some mainstream status with the release of Tomb of Mutilated and appearing in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Deicide shocked audiences with more provocative themes and stage antics, while Entombed's Left Hand Path introduced the chainsaw guitar tone that further evolved death metal's sound. Other notable contributions came from bands like Cynic, Atheist, Dismember, and Nile, among a whole bunch of other greats, enriching the genre with progressive, melodic, and technical innovations. By the late 90s, death metal's influence was starting to wane. Grunge was taking over, as well as some nu metal genres like nu metal and metalcore. However, there were a few bands that were able to carry the torch from the late 90s into the 2000s. Bands like Bloodbath, Opeth, and Necrophagist kept the flame alive, setting the stage for the genre's early revival in the 2010s. Today, acts like Frozen Soul, Gatecreeper, Undeath, 200 Stab Wounds, and Blood Incantation continue to push the genre forward, blending old school ferocity with modern energy. With this new scene, death metal is thriving once again, proving its resilience and enduring appeal. Death metal's core sound remains rooted in its origins, but modern bands have refined it through gear and modern production choices. In the 80s and 90s, bands like Death and Cannibal Corpse relied on amps like the Marshall Valve State 8100, the Crate GX130C, and PV5150s for their crushing, distorted tones. Swedish bands often use the Marshall JCM800 for the mid-punch that it had. Today's bands use a lot of the same gear. Lots of PV5150s, Macy Bogey rectifiers, and Crate amps. But modern producers have shaped their tone a little bit better to give them a little more clarity. Where old school death metal had a raw, gritty edge, modern production polishes the sound without sacrificing the weight, allowing these low tunings to cut through the mix effectively. Modern bands have also expanded death metal's palette, blending the old school sound with doom, hardcore, and even grind elements, emphasizing groove and sometimes even slower, more dynamic structures. While bands like Cannibal Corpse and Entombed dabbled with these elements, much of the genre's early output leaned heavily on speed and technicality, sometimes at the cost of memorable songwriting. Today's death metal moves away from relentless tempos and overly complex compositions, focusing instead on really good songwriting and engaging structures, while still keeping the heavy, thrashy, and fast parts that made the genre what it is. This shift brings more variety and dynamics, making the music resonate more with listeners. The vocalists are also putting a lot more emphasis on cleaner screaming so that the listener can understand them better, something that I know that Corpse Grinder put a lot of work into. He wanted to make sure that the listener could understand what he was saying, and I for one definitely appreciate that. By merging modern production with the genre's raw intensity, contemporary bands are pushing the genre forward, while staying true to death metal's roots. Their ability to blend the crushing heaviness with dynamic parts and engaging structures keeps death metal relevant and exciting for both veterans and newcomers alike. Today I want to showcase 3 bands, Gatecreeper, Frozen Soul, and 200 Stab Wounds, and all 3 are among my favorite death metal bands, each contributing a unique spin to the genre while maintaining its brutal intensity. The internet has allowed them to reach massive global audiences, with their albums and music videos racking up hundreds of thousands of views across the internet. 200 Stab Wounds has even reached number 4 on the Billboard Hard Rock chart, while Frozen Soul has solidified their place in death metal's upper echelon by opening amphitheaters for Amon Amarth, Cannibal Corpse, and Obituary. Gatecreeper has also moved beyond the underground scene, headlining their own tours and sharing the stage with some death metal heavyweights like Cannibal Corpse and Dying Fetus, as well as Mayhem. So the first band we have is Gatecreeper, and I found them through a YouTuber named Meat Canyon. He makes really twisted and dark animations on YouTube that are almost satirical, and he likes to wear a lot of death metal shirts in his videos, and he's also a huge fan of all 3 of these bands. In one of his videos, he had a Gatecreeper shirt on, and I wanted to give them a listen to see what they were like. I wasn't really sold at first, but I just kept coming back for some reason, and the first single, Caught in the Treads, for the new album really caught my attention. Gatecreeper sets itself apart by blending old school death metal with hardcore, doom, grind, and melodic death metal, drawing in a diverse fan base without losing the genre's core. Frontman Chase's deep growls and songwriting pair perfectly with Eric's songwriting and guitar playing, and that combines to create a memorable and structured sound that sticks with the listeners. Chase has mentioned the band's focus on crafting catchy, song-driven death metal, ensuring that the fans keep coming back. Their early albums, Sonoran Deprivation and Deserted, anchored their sound in old-school death metal with hardcore elements, which really resonated with their initial audience. However, with their EP, An Unexpected Reality, they took a little bit of a shift in their sound, added some more grind elements, added some doom elements, and that brought in a wider fan base. And this EP has one of my favorite tracks from the band. It's called Emptiness. It's an 11-minute track, and it's really doom-inspired with some death metal in there, and a little bit of black metal. What I really love about it is it has a really dark and melodic theme to it that really draws me in. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Fade to Black. It's got that same kind of vibe, and I really love it. Another one of my favorites is Caught in the Treads. It's off their newest album. It was the first single for the album, and it has a really old school melodic death metal flair to it with the chainsaw guitars. It's just a really catchy song overall, and that's because they base the whole song around the intro riff. And I really appreciate that they don't overcomplicate the song by shoving too many riffs in it. On stage, their guitarist Eric usually uses an Angle amp and orange cabs, but in the past he's been known to use PV amps and Mesa Boogie cabs. They like to use their own version of the Swedish chainsaw guitar tone. Eric has his own custom chainsaw pedal from Lone Wolf Audio, and this sound dominated a lot of their earlier works. And they seem to have pulled back a little bit on the chainsaw sound, try to get more balanced tone, but they still have that signature chainsaw tone. They also have a really 80s horror-inspired aesthetic to them that I think really contributes to their sound and their overall image. And you can see that in a lot of their tour posters and their merch. They try to really bring in that old school 80s vibe into the modern day, and I really appreciate that about them. Frozen Soul was the first of these bands that I came across. Last year or the year before, they had announced they were working with Matt Heafy of Trivium for their newest album, and I really enjoy Matt's work, so I wanted to see what he would sound like in a death metal context. And months later, when Glacial Domination released their first single for the new album, I was blown away by it immediately, and I really enjoyed it. So then I went back and checked out all their other stuff. Frozen Soul has perfected the art of creating a nice, icy, atmospheric brand of death metal, blending slow and grinding death metal riffs with just a hint of hardcore. I think they're really good songwriters, and I think they have a really good ear for crafting catchy songs, especially good choruses that stick with the listener. Their imagery is unmistakably cold, again drawing from 80s horror films, and they reinforce this with practical elements on their stage, including using a snow machine at certain points during their set. Though they're often compared to Bolt Thrower, their music goes beyond their influences, focusing on writing memorable and well-structured songs, rather than their technical complexity. Their collaboration with Matt Heafy of Trivium really shows their dedication to crafting better songs. Guitarists Michael and Chris both use the tried and true PV6505 and Mesa Cab combo live, giving them a really tight sound. I think it's also worth noting that Chris has some sick custom Jackson Randy Rhoads guitars, and Michael loves to use a BC Rich Ironbird alongside their bass player, which further adds to their old school look. They're just absolutely sick guitars. One of my favorite songs by them is called Encased in Ice. It's one of their earliest songs, and it's usually used as an opener for them. I really appreciate the slow build that the intro has. And then the other song that I love is called Glacial Domination. It was the first single off their second album. It's the song that drew me into the band, and I think it's got a really cool catchiness to it. The whole song's based around this one riff, and I think it perfectly captures what their band is really good at. So I discovered 200 Stab Wounds through Instagram. Metal Blade had been advertising them because they just signed them to their label and they had released a new single. It was called Masters of Morbidity, and I was instantly hooked in, and I had to check out the rest of their stuff as well. 200 Stab Wounds, the youngest of these three bands, appeals to fans of early death metal with their really heavily thrashed influenced music. And they also blend in some hardcore elements to create a really fast and aggressive sound. Their raw energy and violent riffing tap into some of the earlier roots of the genre, including thrash metal, but they offer a modern twist to it. Their gear reflects this old school approach, by using the PV amp and Mesa Cab combo, delivering a crushing tone that complements their relentless songwriting. One of my favorite tracks by the band is Hands of Eternity. It was the first single on their newest album. It starts with a clean intro that really builds up in intensity. The main riff of the song moves through a few different pieces, going from tremolo picking to gallops to a groovier section. And that showcases what a talented band can do with the same notes spread over a few different parts. They're able to recontextualize this one part over and over again and make it sound really sick. Another riff I really love from 200 Stab Wounds is the intro to She Was Already Dead. It's one of their earliest songs and has a simple groove to it. The guitars are playing in halftime with lots of chugging and stop and go, and the drums are going full tilt, and it creates a really great dynamic. And the chugging pattern really reminds me of early Sepultura. Their branding is very much old school death metal as well, and a lot of their art heavily reminds me of early Cannibal Corpse, really bloody and violent designs. I can't even show you their album art because of how gruesome it is, but I think you should go check it out if you're really a fan of early Cannibal Corpse. Together, these three bands are reshaping the modern death metal scene, each offering a unique take that's appealing to both old school fans and newcomers. The resurgence of death metal through bands like Gatecreeper, Frozen Soul, and 200 Stab Wounds marks a vital moment for the genre. It signifies a renewed interest for heavier, more extreme music, reminding us that while metal continues to evolve, there will always be a place for the raw intensity and brutality of death metal. The revival is exciting not just for old school fans, but for the future of heavy music as a whole. It revitalizes a genre that at times became stale and stagnant, often focused on being the biggest and heaviest without much substance. Beyond the legendary names like Cannibal Corpse, Death, and Obituary, and so many of the other huge bands that we love, there are a lot of bands in the 80s and 90s that chase that sound and do not hit the mark, with songs that often resulted in riff salads and lacking depth. However, this new wave addresses my shortcomings with the genre. Bands like Gatecreeper, Frozen Soul, and 200 Stab Wounds deliver the heaviness and aggression while infusing their music with groove and structure. Gatecreeper and Frozen Soul in particular are really good songwriters, employing a pop-like structure to their music that really grounds their sound, but maintains their ferocity. A lot of people like to criticize Frozen Soul as a bolt-thrower ripoff, but I think they miss the point. Frozen Soul encapsulates a brilliant 80s horror theme vibe with captivating riffs and well-crafted songs. Their lyrical delivery, especially Chad's cadence, is really commendable. So many vocalists forget the importance of clarity in their screams. Gatecreeper stands out with their diverse discography, showcasing their ability to be able to go through various subgenres, from death doom to hardcore to even melodic elements. Chase and Eric's songwriting is a true highlight for the band, demonstrating that death metal can be innovative and expansive. For fans of the classic style, 200 Stab Wounds delivers fast and heavy riffs reminiscent of Cannibal Corpse, and deicide but with modern production. That gives their sound a really nice crisp edge. They exemplify the old school death metal spirit, while fitting seamlessly into today's scene. What's your take on the resurgence of death metal? Are you excited to see bands like Gatecreeper leading the charge? Or do you miss the more classic sound? Let me know what you think in the comments. So, if you enjoyed any of the tones in this video, I made them with my HX Stomp, and they're going to be available.
What are you, slow?
I made them with my HX Stomp. I wanted to make 3 different tones, one for each band, to try and capture the essence of that band's sound. So if you enjoyed them, they're on Patreon, so you can use the link below to get 50% off for the next month. And if you enjoyed this video and you like some heavier music, I want you to check out this video right here. It's on Lamb of God's Ashes of the Wake. It's one of my favorite albums, and it just celebrated its anniversary. So if you like heavier music and you like this video, I think you might like that one. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.